So Lisa and I have geared up this song 368, Now Let Us Sing, in the hymnal, and it comes in two parts, does it not? There's a lower part that starts earlier, and the higher part starts later, so we thought we would sing it. We have sung it together before, but let's try it again. How were we going to do this? I was going to sing something.
We're going to play it through twice.
Okay.
Well, here, I'm going to play louder in one hand and softer in the other.
Okay.
No?
Yes. Oh, yes. I was just trying to think how I would do that, and that would be impossible. So okay. Now let us sing, 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 sing. Now let us sing, 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 sing. Lift up your voice, be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the faith within. Then the high part is, sing to the power of the faith within. Sing to the power of the faith within. Lift up your voice, be not afraid, be not afraid. Sing to the power of the faith within. So now that we all know that really well, I would invite you to, you can either rise up where you are or stay exactly where you are or lay over in the seat or whatever you would like to do. And we'll try singing this through. We've got 4 verses. They will be on the screens. Join as you wish. Now let us sing, 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 sing. Now let us sing, 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 sing. Lift up your voice, be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the faith within. Now let us sing, 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 sing. Let us sing, 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 sing. Lift up your hearts, be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the hope within. Now let us sing, 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 sing. Now let us sing, 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 sing. Lift up your voice, hearts, be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the love within. Now let us sing. Your hearts be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the joy within. Woo-hoo! Thank you very much. Please be seated. Woo. Good morning. Welcome to church this morning. My name is Khleber Van Zandt. I am still, as of this moment, the minister of the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Venice, where we strive to be a beacon of liberal religion for Florida's Sun Coast and a refuge for all who seek a welcoming community, no matter your color, your creed, your ability, or class, no matter who you love or your gender expression, your political affiliation, or your religious belief or lack of same. Here we celebrate our differences. Is there anybody who's joining us for the first time today who's brave enough to introduce yourself? Or anybody who's back from the north for the first time? Or who's that? You're hiding behind masks. Budenhagens. Hagens. Hagens. Hagen. You say Hagen, I'll say Hagen. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Hi, you are welcome. Anyone else? I have, let's see, our Board of Trustees asked that we begin passing the baskets a while back, some weeks ago, and so if we have ushers who are ready to do that, you could begin doing so now. I do have a few announcements. One is, if you're not speaking into this microphone or directing the choir wearing a mask is a requirement. The Board of Trustees has said masks are required for all persons regardless of vaccination status if you are indoors in the sanctuary. So we want to pay attention to that to keep each other safe. I need to tell you that coffee hour, which you've grown used to enjoying after the service, is canceled for today and for the foreseeable future until we figure out what COVID numbers are doing. Also, Meatless Monday was scheduled to be tomorrow, and that has needed to be canceled as well because with so many people were coming, it's so tight in that space. So we have had those cancellations. Does anybody else know of other cancellations that I'm not aware of? Okay, we'll try to keep you apprised of those. I see an invitation going around to a party on January 24th, and I saw that on the website. It says, come to the launch party. There's a very nice picture of a sailboat. The launch party is January 24th. It's a Monday from 2:30 to 4:30. It's at the Paradise Grill. What could be better in Nokomis? This says it is that I will enter retirement at some point, and the congregation will begin the exploration of self-assessment and securing a new called minister. This is implicit that you need to reserve a spot at this party. You need to do so by January 17th, and I think it says to Linda Underwood. Is Linda here?
No, she's not, but there's also a sign up at the sign up board.
There's a sign-up sheet out on the new member table, the welcome table.
No, it's got a special table.
Okay, if it can have a special table, it is a special event. So, launch party, January 24th, 2:30 to 4:30. Let's see, what else is there? We are awfully glad you've chosen to join us for worship this morning. The prelude begins our worship. Call to worship this morning comes from Lois Van Leer. We light this chalice on the brink of a new year, letting go of what has been, open and hopeful for what may come, renewed, restored, ready to live life fully anew. May we move forward with intention. Let us worship together. Our first hymn is number 113, Where is Our Holy Church? I'd invite you to rise up as you're willing and able. Responsive reading, if you'll remain standing for that. This comes from William Ellery Channing, who is considered the father of Unitarianism in America. I call that mind free, which masters the senses, which recognizes its own reality and greatness, I call that mind free, which jealously guards its intellectual rights and powers, which does not content itself with a passive or hereditary faith. Which opens itself to light, whensoever it may come, which receives new truth as an angel from heaven. I call that mind free, which is not passively framed by outward circumstances and is not the creature of accidental impulse. Which discovers everywhere the radiant signatures of the infinite Spirit, and in them finds help to its own spiritual enlargement. I call that mind free, which resists the bondage of habit, which does not mechanically copy the past, nor live on its old virtues. I call that mind free, which has cut off all fear, cast off all fear but that of wrongdoing, and which no menace or peril can enthrall. Which is calm in the midst of tumults, and possesses itself with all else to From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let music will on earth be sung, through every land by every tongue. Please be seated. Our children still have their own religious education classes by Zoom each Sunday at 10. If you'd like to attend those or help your child to attend, login information can be found on our website at uucov.org or on our Facebook page. We are working hard to get those children back onto the campus, and we will see what the health issues allow us to do. And if you have brought with you any celebrations to church this morning, I'll bring you the mic and ask you to share briefly and personally and non-partisanly. Yes, indeed.
Hello, I'm Leslie Danbury, and I traveled with many Danburys to see the time of graduation of my grandson Matthew at Cornell, but there was no actual ceremony, but we gathered from far parts of the world to be there.
Congratulations. Other celebrations.
Good morning, I'm Kim McHugh, and I've just got to say, Marty King started a bunch of us on a journey years ago of pollination, butterflies, planting things in our yard to help for the future. And I am loaded with caterpillars, and they're alive and well. I'm thinking of Marty.
Me too. Celebrations.
I'm Dave Williams, and Thursday afternoon we got a text message from our daughter who lives in Louisville, Colorado. She told us that they were safe. We hadn't heard any news yet, but she told us that they were safe and in a motel overlooking the town. They could see the fire and the smoke, but they weren't able to learn anything specifically until the next morning when they went into the city and saw that their home was still safe. It was, the storm, I think, changed direction and the wind velocity subsided, and that's what saved their property from total annihilation that you've seen in all those other 500 to 800 homes there. So it's a bit of a concern, too, that these people have lost everything in a matter of an hour. So it's a joy and a concern.
Point. Thank you. Celebrations.
I'm Donna Jewett. I just wanted to let people know that we are having a celebration for Dave Jewett's life this Saturday at 2 o'clock here. We're asking everyone to be masked and appropriately, regardless of status. So I think I'm just looking forward. I just found out that the kids that were supposed to come are not going to be able to be here, but we'll do stuff as virtual as we can.
That's 2 o'clock this Saturday.
If I understand the announcement correctly, on the 24th, we're going to get together and look for a new minister in a bar. What a wonderful idea.
Is that a celebration or what? There are lots of times I don't have answers. No. Oh my goodness. Thanks, John. Any other celebrations? If you've brought any sorrows with you to church this morning, I'll bring you to the mic. May the gratitudes and celebrations among us this day become a blessing to us all. May the concerns and sorrows of each be carried in all our hearts. A burden shared become a load lightened. Our meditation begins with the thoughts of the late Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman. Keep fresh before us the moments of our high resolve. Despite the dullness and barrenness of the days that pass, if we search with due diligence, we can always find a deposit left by some former radiance, but that we had forgotten. At the time, it was full-orbed, glorious, resplendent. We were sure we would never forget. But we had forgotten how easy it is to forget. There was no intent to betray what seemed so sure at the time. Our response was whole, clean, and authentic. But little by little, there crept into our lives the dust and grit of the journey. Details, lower-level demands, all kinds of cross-currents. Nothing momentous, nothing overwhelming, nothing flagrant, just wear and tear. If there'd been some direct challenge, a clear-cut issue, we would have fought it to the end and beyond. In the quietness of this place, surrounded by an all-pervading presence of spirit, our hearts whisper. Keep fresh before us the moments of our high resolve, that in fair weather or in foul, in good times or in tempests, in the days when the darkness and the foe are nameless or familiar, we may not forget that to which our lives are committed. We lift up those in this community who face change, challenge, or loss this day as we hold within our hearts all who suffer. And now we pray, each in our own ways, into the silence. The hopes of this community are offered forth in the names of all those who've gone before and in the names of all those who will come after. In the names of all the helpers of humankind, Shalom, Salam, Amen, and blessed be. one hears a sermon that begins with mention of the band of English separatists who came over on the Mayflower to land at Plymouth Rock in 1620, one assumes it's going to be a Thanksgiving sermon. But one would, this time anyway, be wrong. Because Happy New Year. This is a New Year's sermon. Thanksgiving was a long time ago. I mention those pilgrims to remind you that those people, before disembarking onto the new, for them, world, took the time to discuss and sign a document ever after known as the Mayflower Compact, in which they said something like this: "We do covenant ourselves together into a civil body politic for our better ordering and preservation, and to enact such just and equal laws as shall be thought most convenient for the general good of the colony." That's just not bad for a first attempt by Europeans anyway at democratic government in America. Not bad unless you happen to be a person of color or a woman or an indentured servant or any of the myriad individuals or groups excluded from the process by those straight white men of a certain age in charge back then. Wouldn't happen that way now. And then leap from 1620 to 1637, a little bit inland and a couple of clicks north. As new settlers began building in the town of Dedham, Mass., they stopped to wonder what sort of church they would like to set up for themselves. After great deliberation, they chose a congregationally oriented one. They fully laid out the stuff about that in a 1648 meeting of Puritan churches up in Cambridge in a document now known as the Cambridge Platform. That platform has become the defining document for churches organized under congregational polity, which ours is. So, two documents produced within a few years of each other and within a few miles of each other that still have relevance in our congregational life today. Or they oughta. We'll get back to those documents in a bit, but since it is a new year now, I thought I'd ask your help with something. I'd like to make a list of the successes this congregation has seen over the last 5 or 10 years. I will certainly make my own list, but I think it's important that you pitch in, because I don't intend this list to be a list of the successes I feel I've had. I don't intend this to be a list of the successes the congregation has had, only from my point of view. Rather, this should be a list of successes you feel you've had. So here's a start on that list. This is from my own perspective, just so you'll see what I mean about this. I'll begin with our involvement in the Family Promise program that for years has helped families on the edge of housing difficulties get back into stable housing. Before the pandemic, we were housing families over in Astelinder House here on campus for 4 weeks out of the year, and then that was set to become 8 if we ever made it. I'm not sure, but we had signed on for 8 weeks a year. Sadly, that whole Family Promise program has been on a bit of a hold during the health crisis, and we will just have to see what happens with it next. But our campus team has greatly increased accessibility and the usefulness of many areas on campus. They've remodeled the sanctuary's lanai and patio areas. If you remember what that was like, this is much easier to use, I think. They've added a ramp into Waters Hall. They've rebuilt this chancel to include this ramp that I think will allow entirely different levels of participation by the differently able. The lighting in here, as I understand it, is all LED now too, thanks to the late Ray Bennett. Getting the memorial wall built out there took an awful lot of planning, politicking, and prep work, mostly by Bev. It now displays a number of brass plaques containing the names of beloved members and friends of this congregation who have passed on. That memorial wall has become an important touchstone for us, and I'm often told how important it is to the families who drop by here to visit their loved ones from time to time. We were more or less forced by COVID to make audiovisual upgrades across the campus. In both Waters Hall and the Astlender House, we're now able to use Zoom to include people in team meetings, adult religious ed classes, fellowship groups, and the like. And we're able to live stream now from the sanctuary so that people can join us for worship or other programming here on their computers or their phones from wherever they may be, whether they're here at home in Florida, up in Portland, Maine, or wherever. I have had people tell me they didn't think that was a necessary item. And I'm reminded of Bruce King. You brought up Marty. Bruce is at home. He has a very hard time getting here. His family tells me that every Sunday he watches and sings the hymns. Our office digital systems have been revamped, so it ought to be easier to manage all the communications that a congregation of this size needs to do in this postmodern electronic world. Excuse me. I also think we've settled into the coordinating council and the team concept that Bev and others implemented some years ago. There had been tremendous numbers of programs and events, meetings and such here on campus, and I think there will be again as the pandemic continues to abate. Did I mention the solar panels on the roof of the sanctuary? So that's a short list, very short. To all of you who've worked or donated to have all that stuff happen, I can't and we can't thank you enough. And I do know that there are many other items that ought to be added to that list, and so that's why I ask your help. Send me an email, send me a text, send me a tweet, whatever your chosen mode of communication is. I want to add one more thing to the bottom of this list, and that is that before the pandemic, this congregation appeared to be moving through a size transition from a small family size past a mid-range pastoral size and into a larger program size organization. Accordingly, we were adjusting some of our ways of doing things to accommodate those necessary changes that we were seeing, at least until COVID came to town. I think it remains to be seen what lasting effects the pandemic may have on that size transition for this congregation. Speaking of transitions, your settled minister is about to retire, I hear, which actually is the primary reason for making such a list of successes, so that you can tell prospective new ministers about yourselves and about the history and power of this congregation. You'll do it anyway. We may as well start now. So, if we're going to be honest about our successes, we also ought to recognize the times when perhaps we, shall we say, fell somewhat short of our aspirations. I have 3 examples to run by you. The first, this congregation some 10 years back hired an interim minister and then, through an interesting process, rehired him as a contract minister. Yes, maybe, as I sometimes hear, it was all you could do. Yes, the UUA did, in the end, give its reluctant, grudging approval. But yes, you are still known around the country for that event. Because an interim minister is precluded by all kinds of rules and covenants from taking on any other roles in the congregation she or he has served after that interim period is over. I'm not aware of any other cases where an interim minister has stayed on with the congregation. And I have to tell you, I very nearly myself didn't enter my name when I saw that in your history. Today I'm glad I didn't let it stop me, certainly, but how many other prospective ministers will you miss out on because of that one little thing in the history? I urge you to be ready to explain it fully and openly to anyone who asks. Please don't say it's just because we're smarter than everybody else, which I have heard. Yes, I have. So another thing that predates my own tenure here is a story about an annual meeting that became contentious over, I think, a question about steeple lighting. As I understand it, I wasn't here, as I understand it, a person had designed a one-of-a-kind lighting feature that would transform the steeple of the sanctuary into something of a beacon for anyone who came by, sort of like the flame that the Statue of Liberty is holding. Again, as I understand it, that piece of art would have been, in large part, a gift. Maybe, maybe not. But the cost to the donor would have been in the thousands of dollars, certainly. It was a lot of money. The debate I heard was about whether the congregation should spend the money on making the sanctuary more noticeable or should rather use the money to help the disadvantaged, the homeless, the hungry, the prisoner. You know, that's an age-old question, of course. Should we spend our resources on helping people see this place as a beacon and a refuge? Or should we spend our resources in helping the homeless, the hungry, the disadvantaged? The answer is yes. It's not an either-or question, but a both-and question that we ought to keep in our minds all the time. It's too bad there were so many hurt feelings over the way that debate played out. Third, an event I was in the room for was an annual meeting called a few years back that included a debate about a so-called statement of conscience that the UUA, somebody in the UUA, not the whole UUA, the UUA sent out in early 2017 in response to the outcome of the 2016 election. Sounds partisan already, don't it? At first, the people who sent it out asked us individual UUs to sign as a personal statement of conscience, which would give each and every one of us a choice. The next message I got was asking ministers to preach to their congregations that they should all sign that statement. Not something I'm personally comfortable with for a variety of reasons. Finally, the people who'd written it began to push for congregations as a whole to sign on to the document, vote and sign. Now, there are so many systemic things wrong with that I don't know where to start. For one, it's totally against the Cambridge platform. But you, of course, in this and other things, will have your own opinion. When it came time for that annual meeting, some good-hearted person, had the innocuous sounding idea to put a pro microphone over here and an a con microphone over here. Ugh. Automatically setting up us versus them. If I leave you with nothing else after all these years, please don't set up your annual meeting microphones that way. In the end, whatever side you were on, your feelings were likely bruised. It was a tough day. I heard people say things to one another that at the very least ignored the complexities of those issues. Now, don't bring all this up to remind you of your hurt feelings. I bring it up to say that a beloved community like this one is a fragile thing. And it is, in the end, in your hands and no one else's. A beloved community like this one is a fragile thing, and it is, in the end, in your hands and no one else's. You're entering a critical time in the life of this congregation when, as a congregation and even as an individual, you are going to be asked to do a lot of personal reflection about your mission, about your covenants, about who you are, about who you need to be as an individual and a congregation, and how then to become those things more fully. This congregation, like all UU ones that I'm aware of, is organized under a congregational polity, which means that the congregation is the defining body in our system. A congregation follows its own paths, makes its own decisions. The defining document of that polity, the Cambridge Platform of 1637, makes clear that the congregation is also part of a larger community of congregations, part of a larger legacy of many traditions. Another little piece of history that I think is relevant, as people called Unitarians began to move out of and shed the strict Calvinism of the Congregationalist churches they were parts of then, one of the reasons they did so was that they wanted to lift up the good they saw as inherent in each of us. They wanted to honor the power and the rights of the individual as opposed to the power of and constrictions of the collective. Hence, our first principle about the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Now, in recent times, we've begun to see in Unitarian Universalist circles a turn back towards a focus on our commonalities as human beings and the power of how it is we gather in communities. There is a power in the individual, no doubt, but we can also see the power that comes from gathering and acting in community. So how can we both honor the freedom and the power and the conscience of each individual and act in community? Well, by using democracy, you say. Democracy is at the heart of American traditions. You could say it started with those folks in the Mayflower back in 1620 before they got off the boat. It's at the heart of our religious traditions as well. Our fifth principle says that as a congregation we will affirm and promote the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. Democracy. Let's vote. Let the majority decide. All well and good, unless you're in the minority. Those first pilgrims did their best at democracy. but they had an immature understanding of its possibilities, and so they didn't get it quite right. They left too many out of the process. The early Puritans, likewise, instituted the congregational polity we still use, but they too often missed the mark. They too often used what are otherwise positive principles to squelch and exclude minority views, even as Puritans driving people out of the community who couldn't toe the party line, as it were. Be that as it may, the Mayflower Compact and the Cambridge Platform are our documents, not just our American documents, but our Unitarian Universalist documents. The democratic and congregational traditions they bequeath to us have stood the test of time, lo these many centuries. But their power has been misused at times, too, sometimes letting congregations believe that they're the most powerful thing ever, sometimes using democratic principles in ways that accentuate exclusivity and thus become simply a tyranny of the majority. Democracy works until it doesn't. Congregational polity is great until we start to think of the congregation as the be-all, end-all that lets us ignore the rights of conscience of people with minority viewpoints. It has been a rough couple of years, and we're still here. In the period of challenge that you personally, this congregation, and the world face right now is not likely to subside quickly or at any time really soon. I would encourage you in the end to practice what our congregational covenant says. In a climate of joy, goodwill, and trust, this congregation covenants to treat one another with kindness and respect, etc., etc., etc. Happy New Year. Please send me your additions to that list of congregational successes you've seen. So may it be. And our last hymn is number 318, entitled We Would Be One. So I'd invite you to rise up as you're willing and able. Our benediction comes from Eric Walker Wickstrom. If you are who you were, and if the person next to you is who he or she was, if none of us has changed since the day we came in here, we have failed. The purpose of this community or of any church, temple, zendo, or mosque is to help its people grow. We do this through encounters with the unknown, in ourselves, in one another, in the other, whoever that might be for us, however hard that might be, because these encounters have many gifts to offer. So may you go forth from here this morning, not who you were, but who you could be. So may we all. Go in peace, walk softly on your paths, and may the light of love shine on you all your days.